Right, welcome everyone to today's Be Well Lunch and Learn titled Self-Care Strategies for Emotional Well-Being. We're so excited to have Tia Briscoe with us today to talk about this. She is from our Support Link Employee Assistance Program and has joined us before, so welcome back, Tia. Before I pass this over to her, I did want to give you two reminders. The first being that we do record these sessions, so if you're unable to stay for the entire length of the session or would like to watch it at another time or refer a friend or a colleague to this, you can locate these on our Be Well website. We will also be sending a follow-up email that includes both the recording and the slides, so that will be in your inbox in about a few days or so. Secondly, if you have any questions for Tia throughout today's session, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A chat box, and she will get to as many as time allows for. So with that, Tia, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, Angela. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Actually, I got to make sure it's still morning. Actually, good afternoon. I am currently located in Atlanta, Georgia right now. So most of you who have been in my trainings know that I'm actually from Las Vegas, but I'm here for a special reason today. My partner is a baseball coach and they have their championship game. So send Jackson State all of your good energy today because we need it starting tomorrow. But super excited to be able to be here with you all still and talk about self-care and wellness during this mental health month. And so if you've never been in my trainings before, my name is Tia Briscoe, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work with organizations such as yourself to ensure that you all are taking care of yourselves and doing a good job at self-care. And so if you've been in my trainings before, you know I actually ask one of the most important self-care questions of all time. And I need you all to pop into the chat with this answer. What are you all drinking today? If you know me, you know I have a green tea lemonade from Starbucks. That's like my #1 drink. And then after that is a chai. And other than that, I don't know. I'm not a coffee person, but I feel like sometimes I want to be because sometimes y'all coffee looks amazing. So super jealous of it, but green tea lemonade here, lots of water. Ooh, a vanilla chai. I was really going back and forth between the green tea and the chai today, but I was like, it's kind of warm out here in Atlanta, so I'm gonna go with a nice little green tea. Iced tea, iced water. Yes, it's gotta be cold. A cinnamon caramel cream cold brew. That sounds amazing. Where is that from? I would love to know. Water and coffee. Are we on like our third, fourth, fifth cups of coffee? Lemon ginger water, very good for you. D&D coffee and an iced water. Rubio's tea. French breakfast. Love that coffee with Hershey's chocolate creamer. See, y'all are just doing the most and I love it. Massive coffee with a half gallon of caramel creamer. It's because it's Tuesday, ain't it, right? Isn't this like the most Tuesday of Tuesdays ever? Like, I just feel like sometimes Tuesdays are more Mondays than the actual Mondays. So yes, okay, you got that from Starbucks. That might be my drink tomorrow without the coffee because that sounds amazing. And then someone said water, water, water. Well, wonderful. I want you all to sit back, relax today. This conversation is all about self-care, right? So again, we're going to talk about how to take care of your emotional health, your physical health, the whole nine. And then we're going to get into some of my favorite coping skills, especially for your emotional well-being, because, you know, there's a lot going on in the world, right? Isn't the world kind of busy and it's like here, there, and everywhere? So I want to give you some of my favorite tips and tricks on how to take care of your mental health as well as your emotional health. Now, if you've been in my trainings before, you know I'd love for you to pop into the chat. Poppy cherry is literally my favorite of all poppies. Add a little grenadine to that. Chef's kiss. Okay, that is so amazing. I love it. Beautiful. So I do want to remind you that here at Support Link, we have a plethora of benefits available for you. Everything from therapy to legal services. I'll talk about those a little bit at the end of today's session, but I do just want you all to remember that we have so many resources, and one, they are confidential, and two, they are free. Two of the best things, confidential and free, you can't go wrong. So at the end, I'll talk about some of the benefits, but there won't be all because we have so many. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or anything like that. So again, just a quick disclaimer on that we do have services available for you. You all know what to do. I've been here before with you all, Penn State. We have almost 200 people in the chat. Please go ahead and pop in the chat if you have any questions at all. So today's session is really going to focus on your emotional well-being. Now, of course, we're talking about self-care, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, but we're going to talk about self-care specifically around your emotions and how to maintain your emotions in a good way. We're going to identify the impacts on your emotions on well-being and how to respond, and also why you may respond in certain ways. We're going to be comfortable making self-care a priority? Yes, we are talking all about self-care. How many of you feel like you have pretty good self-care? If so, put a 1 in my chat for me. If you feel like you do pretty good with your self-care, have good boundaries. Okay, good, good. How many of you feel like, there's room for growth, right? Put a 2 in the chat. I'm gonna put a 2 in my chat. There's room for growth, right? And I don't ever want to say that you're not doing good at self-care, you're failing at self-care. I don't like those words. I always say it's an area of growth for us, right? We're just trying to maintain as adults most of the time. So there's that. So we're going to focus on all of those things and make sure that you all have some really good self-care techniques. These are some of my favorite personal self-care techniques for your emotions. So we'll talk about those at the end of today's session. And one thing I want to remind you all is you don't have to wait till the end of the session to ask questions. I'm a big person that, like, if I don't ask a question right away, I'm going to forget. Is anyone like me? Like, if you don't ask the question, your brain is going to go, what was I going to ask them again? So please don't be like me. Go ahead and ask those questions if you'd like in the chat. It's 100% open, so feel free to do so. So a lot of times when we talk about emotions, especially as a therapist, one of the favorite terms that comes up is, how does that make you feel, right? Have any of you ever seen that on like TV where the therapist is like, tell me how you feel, or how do you think you feel, right? And it's like the common question that therapists tend to ask, which is so funny because most therapists don't really ask that question a lot, but that's neither here nor there. But ultimately, when we're talking about emotional wellness, the question is kind of phrased in a way that supports awareness. Because one thing that we notice is that when people are aware of their emotions and they can name their emotions and they can identify why they have the emotions or the triggers, they actually do better in communicating and processing their emotions. So when we ask the question, how does that make you feel? We're basically trying to bring some awareness to your brain to say, hey, this makes me feel this, or this person makes me feel this. And again, there are certain things that in our lives may be brought up because of trauma or our backgrounds or whatever that might be. And so it's really, really helpful to have an understanding of what you feel and why you feel a certain way. And so I actually want to do a round of Mythbusters, if that's okay. Y'all want to play? Have y'all seen that show before, Mythbusters? It's like one of my favorite shows. Like, I have secret favorite shows, y'all. Like Mysteries at the Museum. Y'all don't judge me. I love history, and like I don't like to do science, but I actually like science. So I'm gonna do a round of Mythbusters. So how many of you think that emotions are normal? Like having emotions are normal? Do you all think that it's normal or not normal? So is it true or false? Okay, so you think having emotions is normal. Okay, a lot of you said having emotions is normal. Okay, I'm going to throw another monkey wrench into that one. How many of you think that having negative emotions is normal? You can put a yes or no in the chat. Negative emotions, like being angry, being irritated. Okay, that is true, 100%. They are 100% normal. Any feeling that we have is 100% normal. So again, we'll talk about that. So the next question I want to ask you all is, do you think that self-care is selfish? How many of you think self-care is selfish? That if you were to put boundaries, if you were to say, I don't have the capacity for that, how many of you would think that that's a selfish act? Not selfish. Okay, good. Good. Okay. I like that. How many of you think that we have influence over other people's emotions? Yes. Beautiful. Okay. Can anyone name that? Can anyone tell me what that term is called when we do have influence over other people's emotions? Or do you all know what the name of that is? Transference. Yep, that's in the therapy world. So when we have influence other people's emotions, it's actually called emotional contagion. Have y'all ever heard of that before? I know we probably don't want to even think about anything being contagious, right? But have you all ever had somebody that like walked into a room and like immediately the vibes went down? Have y'all ever had that before where like the person walked into the room and you were like, they're here again? that energy was just low and like, ugh, like you are just such bad vibes, right? And it kind of puts you in kind of a negative space or like a bad space too, where it's like, I don't, my vibes are also killed, like a vibe kill. Any of you ever had a vibe kill before? Okay, how about the opposite? Have any of you ever had somebody walk into the room and you're like, they're here, right? Like it's so exciting to see them. Yes, an emotional vampire. Like you're just super duper excited. Like you are amazing. It's so funny because last night I had a little bit of a migraine and I went to see my partner because his players stay at a different hotel than what I'm at. And one of his players is just this big personality. Everybody loves him. And he walked into the room and immediately my whole mood changed. Like my headache was gone. I was like in such a good mood because he has such a big personality and it's so like warm and caring and kind. So we can actually really affect other people with our emotions. Y'all are so sweet. I don't think y'all know this, but I like love coming to Penn State. When y'all have me come, I'm just like, my people. Anyway, so thank you so much. Y'all are so sweet. But when we are engaging with people based on their emotional stance, a lot of the times we can be impacted as well, unless we really know our own emotions, right? So if I came in and I'm grouchy and I'm grumpy, you probably are like, well, you're grumpy. That's you, right? My emotions is still positive and good. And so we do have to understand that while we may have influence on other people's emotions, knowing and understanding our own emotions is going to be most helpful for us. So to answer the other two questions, emotions are not good or bad. The thing that comes up with emotions that is good or negative can be the behavior that is attached to those emotions. You can feel angry, but are you feeling angry and communicating that you're angry? Or are you feeling angry and punching holes in walls, right? It's very different things. So emotions are not good or bad. They're just present, but it's the behavior that is attached to the emotion that can make it like good or bad. And then the second one, it is okay to be healthily self-centered. I always say self-care is not selfish, it is selfless. The more that you actually take care of your own mental, physical, and emotional wellness, the better you are for other people. I want to tell you all a story, if that's okay, about my late grandfather. So my late grandfather is one of my favorite people because his birthday is the day before mine, and we're both Scorpios. So for those of you who, y'all know what I'm saying. So my grandfather, one day I was complaining to him, right? I was telling him I was irritated at work. I was a supervisor and I was getting really overwhelmed. And hey, Scorpios, I was getting super overwhelmed and just really irritated. And I went to their house because they lived on a farm. My grandparents lived on a really big farm. And I was just there kind of complaining. So my grandfather goes, come with me. Now, there's only one or two reasons why my grandfather does this to you. One, you're in trouble. Two, he's ready to say something profound. Me, I never got in trouble with my grandparents. I was their favorite. Don't tell my cousins. But he goes, come with me. So I go to outside with my grandfather and he goes, I want you to look down. I said, okay. So I looked down and he said, what do you see? I said, I don't see anything. They lived in the desert. If you've ever been to California, Little Rock, California, there's nothing there. So he goes, okay, so now I want you to look across the field. I go, okay. So I look across the field and there's watermelons growing and the soil looks good. It's like they turned it. It was clean. It was stinky, but it cleaned really well. And he goes, I want you to understand this. If you don't take care of your garden, nothing is going to grow. If you don't take care of yourself, nothing around you is going to be at its best. So yes, it is okay for you to be healthily self-centered because you being self-centered in a way that's going to improve your mental wellness and emotional wellness is going to trickle down to other people. That's why I see a lot of kids who come into therapy and I'll ask the parents, like, how are you doing? And their parent will say, not that great. And that's what shows me that it trickles down to other people. So it is okay to be a little bit self-centered in the way of taking care of yourself, and that will in turn make you better for other people. Does that make sense? Do all of these make sense as to why we busted these myths? Very good. Very good. I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about self-care then. So why do we care so much about self-care? Well, self-care is defined as an intentional, I will repeat that, it is an intentional act of meeting one's emotional, physical, or spiritual needs. It helps restore the body and refresh the mind. And ultimately, it gives you kind of like that for life, right? It makes you more positive. It makes you more efficient. You just feel good. And so one thing that I do tell people is that your mind and your body are connected, and they are actually connected, because a lot of people say like, oh, mind body connection, but they are literally connected through your nervous system, which is your spinal cord. So if something happens to your brain, it's going to happen to your body. So for example, how many of you bite your nails? Do I have anyone out there that bites their nails? Look, it's a judgment-free zone. I have on acrylics because I bite my nails. So you can answer and feel safe because I bite my nails. Okay. Okay. Some people might pick at them. Okay. Same thing. Absolutely. How many of you grind your teeth? So like when you are sleeping, maybe you have to wear a night guard, or your dentist says like, oh, your teeth are grinding. Okay. How many of you, if you were to look down right now, how many of you are bouncing your legs or shaking your legs at this present? Okay. Or maybe some of you are fidgeting with something. So for example, you have something in your hand, maybe a pen, you're clicking it. Okay. How many of you get migraines? Anyone a migraine sufferer like me? Painful, right? I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, I tell you. Oof, not fun, not fun. Okay. And so what happens is when we get stressed out, when we get overwhelmed, when our body is taking the hit, the brain and the body start sending signals to each other. And ultimately, what they're trying to do is push that negative energy out of you. That's why you bite your nails or pick at your cuticles. That's why you fidget. That's why you bounce your legs, because your body is trying to push that extra energy out of you that may or may not need to be there. So what we tell people is that if you're experiencing stress, it's absolutely going to impact your body and vice versa. So that's why we care so much about self-care, is because it is not a selfish thing. It's something that you have to do to take care of yourself. You need to self-care. It's not a luxury. It is a necessity. You have to self-care. And so let's talk about self-care when it comes to your emotional well-being, because one thing we know in therapy is that our emotions impact how we behave. So if we don't have an awareness of an emotion or why an emotion is happening, then we're going to behave in a way that's probably not as great as you would like it to be. So let me tell you all a little bit about triggers. Can I talk a little bit about triggers? Because I hear people say all the time, I'm so triggered. I'm so triggered. I'm triggered. Let me tell you what a trigger is. A trigger is something that you have some form of emotional investment in, or it has impacted your emotions in some way. So maybe your person is a trigger is a person, right? Maybe you had a bad engagement with somebody, and every time you see that person, it could be someone in your family, right? Every time you see that person, you're like, I just can't stand them, right? You know, your energy starts to change or whatever that might be. That's because you have some form of either emotional investment or emotional impact with that person. So for example, what if I came to you all today and said, the green tea lemonade is better than the peach green tea lemonade? Would you care? Like, honestly, as long as you're not drinking it, would you care? If I'm like, oh, the peach green tea is so much better than the lemon green tea, which I like them both. This is just less calories. Right? Because you have no investment in that, right? You're like, Tia, look, more power to you. Glad you like it. You know, if you like it, I love it, right? That's on you, because you have no emotional attachment to that or no emotional investment. But if I came up to you and be like, I can't stand your child, like, I don't like your kids, you probably would look at me like I had lost my mind, right? Like, who are you? What are you saying to me? Like, why are you talking about my kids, right? Because you have an emotional investment in your kids. So when we talk about a trigger, I want you to understand that a trigger is something that you have either an emotional attachment to or an emotional investment in. We don't get triggered by stuff we don't care about, right? We don't get upset by things we don't care about. We may have some feeling towards it, but we're not triggered by it. And so when you find something that triggers you or a person that triggers you, I want you to ask yourself, what is my investment in this thing? Why does this thing or this person trigger me? Does that make sense for you all as to what a trigger is? Because we don't walk around getting triggered all day long by different people, right? Especially if I were to walk down Peachtree Boulevard right now, I probably wouldn't get triggered by anybody because I don't know them, right? I have no investment in it. But if I walk by and my partner walked by, I would be immediately triggered in a positive way because it's like, oh, what are you doing here? I thought you was at practice, right? So again, we don't have a lot of investment in certain things, so we're not easily triggered. And so when you're thinking about your emotions and self-care, I want you to ask yourself, what is the trigger? And then how am I responding to the trigger? Am I getting upset? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I yelling right now? What is this thing? What is happening to my body and my mind as I'm engaging with this thing? And then ask yourself, is your behavior or your response to this trigger helpful for you? Is it going to help you in the long run? So say, for example, for those of us who don't engage with our family in the holiday, maybe you have to go to the holidays with your family, and all of a sudden, when you're at the holiday, you start drinking more, right? Because you're trying to numb down the frustration or the overwhelm or whatever that might be. You might ask yourself, is me drinking right now helpful, or do I have another option that I can do? Maybe I need to leave. Maybe I can go sit with my favorite cousin, whatever that might be, so that I'm not as triggered. Someone said, I was just triggered yesterday. Interesting. I pulled myself away from the trigger and they came back around. And my grandmother always used to say, sometimes we aggravate other people's demons, right? So what that means is, in essence, is sometimes a lot of people like to project on you what they're feeling about it. So maybe they're triggered and they're trying to make you triggered because they're triggered, right? We can't always say that everybody is going to manage their own emotions, right? We can't change the reactions of other people. All we can do is change our reaction, right? And sometimes, I hate to say it like this, sometimes other people may be triggered and want other people to be triggered with them, right? That's why they always say like misery likes company, because again, it's hard being the only one who is stimulated, especially when you don't know where to put that. Sometimes they're trying to project that off because they don't know where to put these emotions. So sometimes you have to be okay with saying, you know what? I'm just going to walk away completely. Like, I'm not going to answer the phone, whatever that might be, whatever it is that's going to be helpful for you. So very good. Any questions about triggers and response to triggers at all? Was this helpful to kind of know a little bit about what triggers are and why we may get triggered? Very good. Very, very, very good. Beautiful. All right. Perfect. Perfect. I love to see it. This is why I love coming to Penn State. Y'all never leave me out here by myself. Y'all are like, yes, this is good. I love it. Beautiful. All right. So let's talk about ongoing self-care strategies, because if you've ever been in training with me before, you know I talk a lot about neurobiology and how the brain likes to react. And the brain's main job in the body is to protect its human being. So one way that we can really protect our brain is to have like a basket full of self-care strategies for maybe when you're triggered or when you're irritated or when you're overwhelmed or whatever that might be. So some of the ways that we can kind of handle ourselves in the way ongoing is, number one, you want to take frequent breaks and check in, right? Maybe you're engaging with somebody who is just drained. Someone said an energy vampire. Maybe you are dealing with somebody who's an energy vampire, or maybe someone that you don't really connect with. You want to try to step back to take breaks and then check in, because if you don't, what's going to happen is what we call nervous system dysregulation. Have you ever heard that term before? Regulation, dysregulation. Okay, let me explain it to you. So when a baby is crying, what do you all do? Like when you have a baby that's crying, is sitting there, is crying. Now, of course, you might pass it back to their parents, right? Because that's what TT does. I don't do crying babies a whole lot, but what do you do when a baby is crying? Right? You pick them up, usually you try to soothe them, maybe you'll talk to them, right? You may rock them back and forth, and then you may hand them over to their parents. I'm a godmother of 5. I'm always handing babies off to people. But most of the time you're going to try to soothe them, right? So what happens is you are using your nervous system, your regulated nervous system, to help another nervous system that is dysregulated. And we call that co-regulation, if that makes sense. So we've been doing this since we were babies. We were either being soothed or soothing. Now, what happens is when you have two people that have dysregulated nervous system, that's where your arguments come into play. That's where name calling comes into play. That's where, now I'm out to hurt you and not talk to you because I don't care anymore. That's where that stuff happens. How many of you have ever said something to someone and you're like, gosh, I shouldn't have said that. Like, I should have just, I shouldn't have said that. Anyone ever done that? I've done that before, where I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, right? We all have those moments. And usually we say those things because we are dysregulated. right? We are now dysregulated, we're hurt, we're angry, whatever that might be. And now we're trying to dysregulate the other person, or the other person is already dysregulated. So ultimately, what that means is your nervous system is going into survival mode. It's trying to do whatever it can to get out of that situation. And for us, it's either fight, flight, or freeze. We're either going to not do anything at all and just kind of just stand there and hope it goes away. We are going to either run away from it. We're going to say, you know what, I'm not doing this and I'm leaving, and you go. Or you're going to fight back and say things you don't mean, or whatever that might be. So when we take breaks, what happens is you take yourself out of survival mode. So it's not that you take the break and like, I'm never speaking to you again, but it's, I'm going to take the break, calm my nervous system down by maybe doing some grounding, taking a nap, whatever that might be. And then I'll come back to the conversation when I'm more regulated. And that can stop you from saying things that you don't mean, or doing things that you don't mean. Because when you are stimulated in that way and you're just trying to protect yourself, you're going to say and do whatever you have to do to get out of that situation. Does that make sense now for some of you who may have said something and you're like, oh, I wish I didn't say that, right? Sometimes you get kind of pushed to that point where you're like, okay, guess I got to fight now, right? I guess I got to take the gloves off and go for it, you know? And ultimately it doesn't make us feel good. So one way that we do that is by stepping back and regulating ourselves and then coming back into the conversation. And then you want to ask yourself, if you're starting to get dysregulated, what am I feeling, right? Why am I feeling dysregulated? What is it this person said? What is this situation making me feel, right? Maybe you are having a conversation with your boss and they say something and all of a sudden you start feeling super emotional about it. I would ask myself, like, why am I feeling emotional about this? Do I feel like my boss doesn't think I'm competent? Do I feel like I'm not competent, right? Asking yourself and processing those things. That's in essence what we really do in therapy, is we step in and kind of do this part with you so that you can learn how to do it yourself, right? The goal is not for people to be in therapy forever. The goal is for you all to learn the tools and then be able to do the tools yourself. So a lot of you, when you come to therapy, you'll bring situations that have happened to you, and then we'll discuss it. And this is the part where therapists really kind of step in, the what am I feeling part. And that's where the the how do you feel about that comes from, because in essence, as therapists, we're really focusing on what is this person feeling and what are the tools that we can give this person to help them feel good about their interactions in the world. So that's what we really focus on in therapy. Again, asking yourself, what are you focused on? Now, I cannot tell you how many couples I've had come into therapy and they're like fighting back and forth. And they're like, you know, we want to get a divorce, or we want to break up, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll ask them, like, what are you all fighting about? And they'll kind of look at me and go, right? They don't know because they've become so dysregulated and so survival mode-y, and I don't even know if that's a word, but trying to protect themselves so much that they don't even realize what the whole point of them going through this conversation was. So you want to ask yourself, what is the purpose of me engaging in this with this person or in this thing or whatever that might be? And then you want to ask yourself, what can I do right now in the present to regulate myself, right? Maybe you need to step back. Maybe you need to ask more questions, asking them, hey, why do you feel that way? Or why is this important to you? Or what is it that you're looking for out of this conversation, instead of shutting down and just not hearing them, right? It's easier to ask questions when we're in that space to kind of understand. I always say you want to seek to understand and then be understood, right? So again, asking questions, asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? All of those are ways to kind of pull back that survival mode and really focus on maintaining good emotional well-being. Do I have any questions about that? Because I feel like I get that a lot from people, like questions about like, how do I deal with other people who are dysregulated? Have y'all ever dealt with people like that? Like people who are super duper like dysregulated and just don't know how to calm themselves or whatever that might be? Your child. Now, here's the thing with kids, because I do want to note this. Kids have a hard time with communication. So I want to just note that too, because I feel like a lot of times, like my parents are like, Tia, why are they tantruming or whatever that might be? This is the time that when your kids is, they're having tantrums, that's the time when you want to get down to their level, give them eye contact, and let them have space, right? And again, that's the same thing with anybody when they're having a hard time, is really, really getting to the point where it's like, hey, if you can, because someone said like your ex insults you, look, I am a big fan of not letting people play with you, okay? Tia don't like that. So if you're gonna call me out of my name, if you're gonna yell at me, you're gonna try to hurt me, we're done. That's an automatic, we're done. Like, I'm not gonna even try to discuss anything with you. Like, we're done. But for kids, you know, especially as they're growing up, yes, Scorpio to the core, like I don't play that. My grandpa didn't either. But one thing about kids, and even kids as they're growing up, is they don't always have the language that we have as adults. And sometimes even as adults, we don't have the language. So instead of getting upset with them, I always tell my parents, ask them, what are you trying to tell me? You know, because think about it like this, especially if you have a younger child who's having a tantrum, they have some kind of investment in something. Maybe they want to stay up later. Maybe they want to go outside and play with their friends, right? Maybe they want to, there's still an investment. It may not feel valid to you, right, as an adult, because you're like, look, you got to go to bed. You got to get up for school in the morning. And I know you want to stay here and watch TV, but even recognizing that validation piece is so big for kids and even teenagers and young adults. Hey, I hear that you're upset. I would be upset too if I wanted to stay up at night and watch TV and somebody was telling me to go to bed. I hear you, right? Validation is so very important. You may not be able to change what you're doing, but at the very least, making somebody feel seen no matter what age they are. Because usually, especially with kids, teenagers, and young adults, they're usually overlooked anyway by their feelings that, oh, you're just a hormonal teenager, you'll get over it. Or, you know, you're just a kid, you're just having a tantrum. But a lot of the times that validation piece can be really helpful in relaxing that nervous system and saying like, yeah, I get you want to hang out with your friends, right? I get you want to get in the car with them. And this is why I'm doing this, right? So again, just being aware that like everyone has an investment of something. If they're getting worked up, if they're getting upset, if they're getting mad, there's usually some form of investment. Now, I will say that there are people in this world who just want to be mad for the sake of being mad. Okay, there's that, right? And what I usually say is that has nothing to do with you. Maybe that's the way that they were taught how to communicate. Maybe that's the way they were taught to deal with their emotions. And so that's why I said if someone is insulting you or disrespecting you, you got my full permission to say bye. Like, okay, is that okay with you all? Because I'm not here to tell you to get insulted. That is not me. I am not that type of trainer. So but if someone is making you feel bad, not good, not worthy enough, not deserving of the life that you're living, they abuse you, they call you out of your name, those are the type of people that I'm just like, just don't even deal with them, right? Because there's no use for you, there's no benefit. And that is also having good emotional intelligence and self-care, is knowing, hey, this person is not good for my mental health. And that can include your family sometimes. I just want to note that in there. So hopefully that was helpful in you all, because I feel like, especially with kids, this comes up a lot, is like, why are they so emotional, right? But usually it's because they're having trouble communicating what they want. And also for kids, their frontal lobe is not fully developed yet. So the frontal lobe is like where your judgment, your reasoning, all of that lands. Theirs don't develop until about 25, 26. So you might ask them why they're flipping out and they're like, right? So using your words and having good emotional intelligence for yourself allows them to be able to speak on their own stuff too. So just that part. I mean, you know, it does take a while to develop, but the men in the group are probably like, whatever. Absolutely. Yeah, validation piece is so very important. Someone said, I have been learning that I can communicate with my 10-year-old much better when I validate her feelings. She opens up more and talks to me. Absolutely. Again, validation with anybody across the board. It doesn't even have to be kids. It can be adults. It can even be yourself, right? Sometimes validating yourself, especially if you were in a space of being like gaslighted. Maybe you were in a relationship with someone who was gaslighting you. Maybe you grew up in a family where you were gaslit. That self-validation too is very, very important. You are feeling what you're feeling. What you're feeling is valid. How you are expressing yourself is valid. Like all of those two are really important too, especially if you grew up in maybe an abusive space or you were in an abusive space with somebody. Gaslighting is usually one of those things that kind of make people question themselves and in their self-care too. So good. This was a great conversation, y'all. This is why I say I come to Penn State and y'all are just elite. And so let's talk a little bit about proactive self-care when it comes to your emotional well-being. Now, this may sound like self-care in total, which it is, because the thing about it is you can't take care of one part of your body and your mind without all parts. So all parts are valid. So I just want to note that. So breathing is super important. One thing I want you to remember about breathing is when we get upset, we only breathe enough to survive. We literally, I don't know how many of you have ever gotten to like an argument with somebody and you got really lightheaded. It's literally because you're just breathing to survive. So taking that oxygen in and releasing that oxygen is really, really helpful. You can do a just in and out breathing exercise where you go and you just can breathe. And a lot of times with our emotions, they can trigger things like panic attack and anxiety attack too. So you want to make sure that you're constantly breathing. Eating is super helpful. Have any of you ever been hangry before? I'm always hangry. I was hangry last night and I knew I was hangry. I was like, this is just, I am hangry now. My partner knows. He's like, okay, she getting whiny. It's time for her to eat. So again, the basic things make a whole lot of difference when it comes to your emotional expression. So if we're not eating, if we're tired, if we're cold, if we are too hot, if the small things, right? Little things can cause us to become angry or frustrated or kind of mess with our emotional well-being. So making sure that you're eating properly, eating when you're supposed to eat. One thing that we have found, and this was confirmed by my endocrinologist. He said that your cortisol levels in your body are affected by your adrenal gland, which ultimately can cause you to feel more tired during the day. It can make you feel more irritable during the day. So you have to make sure that you're having like a balanced diet because that can affect your cortisol. And cortisol is, it should always be a stable thing unless you actually need it. So yeah, the basic things, eating, sleeping, all of that. Moving your body is really important. How many of you have ever heard of dopamine and serotonin before? I'll give you all a hint. What do they do? What is dopamine and serotonin? Just saying. Yep. They are the happy drugs in the body. So some of you are drinking your dopamine and serotonin, some of you are eating it right now, but ultimately those are the happy drugs in the body. And physical movement is actually the highest level of dopamine and serotonin production that you can do. So for example, I didn't do any kind of workouts. Usually every day I work out, but I went and walked to the Starbucks that was like around the corner, and I could have drove, right? Because I'm right there. But instead, I took a walk. And by the time I came back, I had like this kind of high dopamine hit. And I was awake and I was lively. That's why I can be awake and lively with you all because I just went and took a walk. And especially in the sun too, very helpful. But movement releases that dopamine and serotonin. So that makes you feel good. It makes you feel alive. It makes you feel successful. It makes you more efficient. And it even helps you sleep better. So the more dopamine and serotonin we get through our day, the better it will be. All right, intimate relationships, we talked a lot about those, so I'm not going to go too deep. But again, if you have somebody in your life that doesn't make you feel good, they are not serving a purpose. You only want people in your life that are going to make you feel good, make you feel positive, feed into you when you feel like you can't really be as successful as you want to be. So I would like to know for you all, who are those people in your life that make you feel like you can do anything? Like if you go to talk to them, you know that you can do anything. I would say for me, my bonus dad, which is funny because he lives here in Atlanta. I saw him yesterday and he just speaks life into me like a lot. Like he'll say stuff and I'm like, oh, no, not that. Thank you. Like, it's very lovely. Someone said your cousin, your mom, your parents, bonus mom, sister, your spouse, your kids. I love when y'all say kids because I'm like, kids don't even realize that they're speaking life into you. Your mama, rest in peace. My condolences. Your BFF. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Your mama, love it. Beautiful. Your best friend, your son, your daughter, all these people are people that you want to keep in your life. Because again, when we don't feel like we can move forward, your journal, I love that. All of those things can speak to us in a way that keeps us moving forward. Remember, your downtime is super important. So I'm going to ask you all for a favor today, Penn State. I've been with you all a couple times now, so I feel like it might be okay to ask you all a favor. Can you all give me 5 minutes a day of self-care? If you can do more, great. However, can you give me 5 minutes a day? It doesn't matter what you do. You can eat a Snickers, you can drink a Starbucks, you can dance the bachata, there. You can run around your house. You can play with your animals, but just give me 5 minutes a day of self-care. Because a lot of the times as adult, we're moving, we're going, we're busy, we're all over the place. And so ultimately, just 5 minutes a day can really change your mental wellness. So 5 minutes a day, that's all I'm asking. But if you can do more power to you. I love it. I love more than 5 minutes. Beautiful. And so today I want to leave you with some of my favorite self-care tactics. These are things that are helpful for dopamine production. They're helpful for sleep. They're helpful for grounding you if you're one to, very good, if you're one to have like panic attacks or anxiety attacks. So I'm going to leave you with these today, if that's okay. Can I do that for you all? Y'all have always been so gracious to us. So let me leave you with some self-care tips that I really like. So low effort self-care. So this is stuff that you can do between like 5 minutes and an hour. If you only have time to do small things, then this is your list here. You can take a 10-minute break from whatever you're doing. This is actually really helpful for someone who has trouble sleeping, because what happens is when you have trouble sleeping because you have an active brain, your brain is kind of like a container. So all day long, you're filling your container up with stuff. People are talking to you, you're talking to them, you're gathering new information. And then what happens is you end up having trouble sleeping because your brain needs to pour itself out. So one way that we can do that is by the brain dump, which you all have heard about before. But you can also take several breaks throughout the day, and that also releases some of the stress of your brain so that you're not carrying that to sleep with you. You can take a short nap, no more than 30 minutes, because if you do, you will enter into REM sleep. Does anyone know what REM sleep is? Is it light sleep or deep sleep? Absolutely. So REM sleep is your deep sleep. So what happens is, if you don't complete your REM cycle, you will wake up more tired than you were when you went to sleep, because your brain has now settled into that deep space, and it's kind of like getting startled to wake up. It ultimately means that you've gotten too deep in your sleep, and now you're going to be tired for the rest of the day because your body wants to go back to that REM sleep. That's why they say like it's good to have a good REM sleep cycle when you're actually sleeping, because then you won't wake up as tired. So what we tell people is try to keep naps between 15 and 30 minutes, because if you go any longer than 30 minutes, you're either going to need to finish your sleep, like, take a 2-3 hour nap. Have any of you ever taken that nap where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna lay down for 15 minutes and it turns into like 5 hours? Y'all don't judge me, I won't judge you. That's because you fell into REM sleep. So just short nap is always good, cat naps. I'm one of those people who can fall asleep really fast. So I can take like 5 minute naps and be like super rejuvenated. Applying things like body lotions, creams, listening to podcasts or audiobooks, watching TV, chatting with somebody. Those are all what we call grounding exercises. So those all require your senses in order to be functional. So for example, for those of you who like Bath and Body Works, that's actually grounding exercises, things like candles, weighted blankets, listening to podcasts. My favorite is true crime. I'm a true crime girly. I love all things true crime. I'm actually going to Crime Con next week because true crime, everything. That actually grounds me. So what I tell people is find something that appeals to your favorite sense, right? That could be smell, taste, touch, whatever that might be. Thank you so much. That's actually my side job, is I cover true crime stuff. Y'all don't judge me. But speaking to people, engaging in those things, all of that can be helpful. And then making sure that you're staying hydrated too. Your body is made up of mostly water, so make sure that you're doing that for sure. Oh, you love true crime? I love it. I can tell you all my favorite shows: Morbid, Moms and Mysteries. We actually know them really well. Crime Junkie. There's so many, y'all. Just, yeah, absolutely. I love my people. And then this one is actually my personal favorite, and I'll tell you why. Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I actually met him at the last CrimeCon. He's really cool. And Nancy Grace, and a bunch of different people. So yeah, my true crimers, I love you all. They're favorite people. Gratitude list. Let's talk about that just for a quick second, because I want to remind you all that there was a time, that could be it. There was a time in your life where there was something that you really, 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 really wanted, and now you have. How many of you have something like that where you're like, if I could just get this, and now you have it? Whether it's a relationship, your kids, a good job, having benefits, right? There was once a time where you didn't have the things that you have now. And that for me is the best way to show gratitude, is to look at the things that you dreamed about and look at them now. So for example, I really wanted an Audi. That was like my dream car since I was in high school. I now have that Audi. So my gratitude is going to be higher because that was something that I really, really wanted in my life. And now I have. So if you're struggling with gratitude and you just want to be like, oh, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that, I'm thankful. Look at, look at what you have, and, that would be great. 100%. Beautiful. All right. So self-care techniques continued. Medium efforts are things like reading a book, taking a bath. These things tend to take a little bit more time. So I would say like 1 to 5 hours or 1 to half a day or whatever that might be. But making sure that you are engaging in those things. Reading a book is my personal thing. Absolutely. Oh, to have a job where you don't get nervous about Sundays. Yeah, absolutely. There are times where you're just like, oh my God. Now you're like, I gotta go to work, right? Reading a book, take a bath, do some stretches. My favorite stretching is called Yoga with Bird. I don't know if you all have ever used her before, but I love to stretch with her. She has stretches for specific things. So for example, if you're having a bad day, if you don't feel like getting out of bed, if you want to stretch, maybe you had a good day, she has stretches for that too. If you want to practice gratitude, she has stretches for that. Again, it's called Yoga with Bird. Ariane is also another good one too. Yeah, Yoga with Bird, kind of like the animal, like a bird. Yoga with Bird. Yeah, love her. One of my favorites. Ariane is also good as well. Love her too. Declutter your space. Make a list of goals that you have for yourself. Vision boards. All of that is really cool. Remember, physical activity is a high level producer. Just 30 minutes a day can get you high levels of dopamine and serotonin. Go for a long drive, walk or bike ride. Something that my partner did and I did yesterday was we're like big fans of R&B music. And so we literally just sat on the couch that's actually behind me and just vibed out to like music for like 2 hours, like our favorite songs, whatever that might be. And that was so like self-care and healing because it was just like, you just kind of take away from kind of all the extra work and things that you have to do. So, doing those things that you really enjoy and taking those time and giving those times to yourself. Adienne, Adienne, Yoga with Adienne. Beautiful. And then, of course, you have your higher effort self-care. So these are things that might take a day or a couple days. So like going on a weekend getaway, spending time with your family and friends, rearranging your home. Maybe you want to volunteer for a weekend or whatever that might be. But this one is my personal favorite. What is a toddler's favorite word? Anybody know what a toddler's favorite word is? No, right? And why is another one that's like high on the list. But toddler's favorite word is no or mine or things that like assert boundaries, like these nuggets, like you better give me some nuggets. I want nugget. Absolutely. But ultimately, they are asserting themselves in that way. You ask them, you want to go outside? No. You want to do this? No. So we have to be like toddlers. Sometimes we have to learn how to assert our boundaries in a way that are going to be respectful for self and others. But sometimes that no is really, really important because you don't want to take something off of someone else's plate and put it on yours and you end up dropping it, right? So we have to be okay with saying, you know what? I don't have the capacity for that right now. Maybe you can find someone else that can assist you and then I can follow up. Again, it's okay to set boundaries for yourself because it's better to set boundaries and be in a healthy state of mind than try to overdo it. Because a lot of the time we are operating in a fear space. My favorite therapist of all time said something so profound to me. And I was like, wow. She said, no is not, or being a people pleaser is not out of love. It is out of fear. That we fear that we're going to lose this relationship, that we fear that if we tell our boss no, or I'm overwhelmed, that we're going to lose something. Sometimes we have to understand that our response to whatever someone is asking, especially as a people pleaser, is because you have a fear that something bad is going to happen, right? So saying no can be a trigger for you, and then that's important to process that as well. And so, my good folks, that is how we take care of our emotional well-being. Again, I want you all to think about something while you're leaving here. We're not going to do a breathing exercise. I want you to do more visualization. I want you to think about the best version of yourself. And when I say the best version, the person that is acting in the way that you would want to act, the person who has good boundaries, the person that can say no, the person that knows what their self-care is. What would that look like for you? What does that person do when they are upset? What does the best version of you do when they are sad? How do they respond to someone that may not be reacting in the best of ways? What does the best version of yourself look like? And then once you get that visual, I want you to ask yourself, what am I doing now in order to get to that best version? And so, my good folks, that is all for me. Do I have any questions at all coming up for you? I do want to remind you that here at Support Link, we have a plethora of benefits and resources. We have our interactive toolkits, mindfulness, meditation, resiliency, and sleep fitness. Those are also really helpful for other people who want to pass them on. We also have licensed therapists here to support you as well. They specialize in everything from anxiety, depression, life balance, child, family, couple, the whole nine, literally 100% confidential and 100% free. And we also have legal consultations, we have financial consultations, we have identity theft consultations, we have daycares, childcare, we have adult elder care facilities, other resources. And Penn State, because we like you all so much, we have our convenience referrals, home improvement services, entertainment services, pet care, auto repair, wellness, travel. Look, in the words of time management, it's going to take me all day to go over these benefits. So go ahead and give us a call at that 888 number, or you can go to supportlink.com. You're going to type in the code PSH with a password, and you will have all of the benefits available for you. So please feel free to reach out if you need us. We are so very happy to help you out. I see the comments. Thank you all again so much for being so wonderful as normal. Y'all are just great. It's always an honor to be here with you all. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. And in the words of the great Jerry Springer, take care of yourselves and each other. And I will see you all again very, very soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much, Tia. Wonderful presentation. Loved your energy. Loved the content you gave us. And it looks like in the chat box, people feel the same. So thank you, everyone, for being such an interactive audience. Again, we will follow up with an email that includes both the recording and the slides. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.